Let's talk about the financial philosophy of Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. His ideas are, well, they're pretty controversial and they're definitely provocative. He basically argues that almost everything most of us were taught about money is not just wrong, but dangerously out of date. So we're going to deconstruct his core ideas. This one quote right here, it pretty much flips a lifetime of financial advice on its head. The whole path we're told to follow, go to school, get a good job, save your money, he calls it a trap. So the big question is why? Why does he think this advice is so completely obsolete? See, his whole argument is that the fundamental rules of the money game have been totally rewritten. The playbook our parents used, he says it's a failing strategy today. And his reasoning really boils down to three specific turning points in history that, in his view, changed everything. Okay, so let's break down these three game changers. First, back in 1971, the US dollar was taken off the gold standard. According to Kiyosaki, that's when money stopped being a real store of value and basically became a form of debt. Second, you've got Moore's Law, which means information and knowledge are doubling at this insane pace, making what you learned yesterday practically obsolete tomorrow. And third, the amount of money being printed today is just off the charts, creating an economic world none of us have ever seen before. For Kiyosaki, you put those three things together, and following the old rules becomes a recipe for financial disaster. All right, so let's tackle the first big myth, the very first piece of advice we all learn: save your money. It just feels like the smart, responsible thing to do, right? But Kiyosaki comes in with this brutally simple question that turns that whole idea completely upside down. And there it is. This is his central challenge to anyone who saves. If the government can just create more and more and more money out of thin air, what does that actually do to the value of the dollars you've so carefully tucked away? And here's the consequence, and it's pretty harsh. If you're a saver, every new dollar printed makes yours worth less. Your purchasing power just gets eaten away by inflation. You get creamed. But, and this is the wild part, if you're a debtor, the exact opposite happens. The real value of your debt actually shrinks, making it cheaper to pay back over time. In this new game, savers are losing and debtors are winning. So, his conclusion, in his famously blunt style, is pretty simple. Savers are losers, and cash is trash. In an economy where money is constantly being printed, just holding on to cash is a guaranteed losing strategy in his book. And that thinking leads us right into his next big challenge to conventional wisdom. I mean, what sounds safer than a steady paycheck, right? It's the goal. It's security. Well, according to Kiyosaki, that very thing, that paycheck, is actually a psychological trap that's holding you back from ever being truly wealthy. His point is that when your life revolves around getting a paycheck, it trains you to think a certain way. You prioritize security above everything else, especially freedom. And this mindset makes you dependent, a slave to money, because you never learn how to create income for yourself. You can really see the massive difference when you put them side by side. The employee is chasing security. Failure is something to be avoided at all costs, and their income comes from trading their time for money. The entrepreneur, on the other hand, is chasing freedom and control. For them, failure isn't the end, it's a lesson. And their income, it comes from building or buying assets that make money for them. He's convinced that breaking away from that paycheck dependency is like a trial by fire. When you don't have that safety net, you're forced to get hungrier, you're forced to get smarter. It's a true test of your character, and it's the only way you'll ever really learn to create your own income. Okay, now this is where things get really, really counterintuitive for most of us. We are all taught that debt is bad, right? Avoid it like the plague. But Kiyosaki says, no, you've got it all wrong. The rich use debt as their number one tool for getting even richer. And a huge piece of this strategy comes down to taxes. Kiyosaki points out that it's often the employees and the self-employed who get hit with the highest tax rates. He loves to use his doctor as an example. She earned $1 million in income one year and paid a staggering $750,000 in taxes. But he says a savvy entrepreneur or investor can use debt and the tax code to make that same $1 million and legally pay zero in taxes. And look, this isn't just some theory he's cooked up. He's living it. We're talking about $300 million in debt that he personally refinanced not too long ago. By getting his interest rate lowered from 5% down to 2.5%, his monthly cash flow exploded. He literally made a fortune by using other people's money. So how does this actually work? What's the playbook? Well, step 1, you find an asset that spits out cash. Think of an apartment building or other real estate. Step 2, you use some of your own money to get a much bigger loan from a bank. That's leverage. Step 3, the rent you collect from that building pays for the loan and hopefully leaves you with extra cash flow every month. And step 4, you use the tax laws which favor this kind of activity to reduce your tax bill, sometimes all the way down to zero. Okay, so when you pull all of these pieces together, savers being losers, paychecks being a trap, debt being a tool, it all leads to the absolute core of his entire philosophy. It's not really about the tactics. It's about a deep, fundamental shift in your mindset. It's about mastering what he calls your internal economy, the stuff you can actually control. And he's really clear on this point. A real entrepreneur isn't just someone who owns a business. A lot of self-employed people work harder and pay way more in taxes than employees do. To him, a true entrepreneur is a combination of a specific mindset, a unique skill set, and the knowledge that they're playing by a completely different set of financial rules. And this right here is the essence of that mindset. See, most people are focused on the external economy, things they have zero control over, like the stock market, what the government does, or what their boss thinks. The real entrepreneur flips that script. They focus internally on the things they can control, their own mindset, constantly improving their skills, the choices they make, and, crucially, how they react when they fail. That's where the power is. And this is the ultimate payoff. This is the superpower that comes from that internal focus. It doesn't matter if the economy is booming or crashing. It doesn't matter if their last venture succeeded or failed. Every single thing that happens to them, good or bad, becomes fuel. It makes them stronger, better, smarter, and, as he says, happier. So, we'll leave you with the very same question that Kiyosaki himself likes to ask. We are so diligent about checking the expiration date on a carton of milk, but when was the last time you checked the expiration date on your own ideas about money? In a world where the rules are changing this fast, maybe that's the most important question you can ask.